Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Zoom meeting. And probably if you're watching this part, the recording on YouTube. For everybody who's new here, my name is Tim Grimes. And I like taking big sips of water before we do these group chats. This is going to be a special group coaching session today. We're joined by my friend Cecilia Hendrix, who is somebody who specializes in a lot of the topics that we discuss on my YouTube channel. Cecilia also has her own YouTube channel, which is Unleashing Happiness. She also has a podcast called Unleashing Happiness. Wonderful YouTube channel and wonderful podcast. Cecilia's podcast is one of the few that I actually listen to these days. And today I was telling her I listened to it at 1.5 speed because I was trying to do things quickly. And Cecilia sounds really good at 1.5 speed. If you want to unmute yourself, Cecilia, and just say hello to everybody.
Hi. So thank you so much. I was having some camera problems, but I am here now and I am really happy to be here. So I've done a couple of these now with Tim and it's been really fantastic. So I'm happy to be invited back again. And if you can't tell, I already talk kind of fast. So I was a little surprised that Tim was able to listen to it at 1.5 speed and actually keep up, but it was impressive.
It's so good. I really liked it. That said,
thank you.
We both, I think, try to be measured with our tone. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend to always listen to Cecilia or myself at 1.5 speed, but it can be fun from time to time. So before we officially get going here, we're gonna probably speak for about an hour, and this is gonna be as usual, relatively informal. But I just want to lay a couple basic ground rules for people who are new here. This is being recorded if you're here live. So if you don't want your identity known, do not go on camera and ask us a question. Now, if you want to ask us a question and be live, if you turn your video off and just have your voice and switch your name to just your first name or a pseudonym or what have you, chances are people are going to have no idea it's you. But if you don't want to even do that and you still want to talk to us, you can ask us a question in the group chat. And we usually get to questions. If we don't see your question, you can just write it again. But yeah, this is a very friendly crowd. And usually people, we encourage people to go live with us on video and audio if they want. We love that. And yeah, no one's gonna snitch on you. I'm not even gonna say your name to your manager for being here live. Yeah, we started a little bit earlier today because that was the time we had. And we think this time might work better for some people. So with that said, I'm just gonna lead a really quick grounding meditation like I usually do, and then say a few words, and then from there it's going to basically just be questions and riffing from Cecilia and myself. But let's just do a really quick grounding meditation. If you're sitting down, which probably most of you are, you can kind of place your feet on the floor if you want, and keep your eyes open or closed on whatever is more comfortable. If you're walking or in some other position where you're not standing, just become a little bit more cognizant of your body, perhaps of like your feet or some part of your body. And then just, for the next minute or so, just allow yourself to non-judgmentally watch your body behave, meaning watch your breath, feel your feelings in your body. Notice your thoughts. If you happen to notice your thoughts, whether they be negative or positive or whatever, just allow yourself to be here with whatever is coming up, non-judgmentally. This is a really easy way to just kind of ground us more into the present moment, where we're like, oh, my legs hurt, or like, oh, I'm having a weird thought right now, or like I feel kind of uncomfortable, or like there's a little bit of tension in my chest or in my head or in my throat or in my stomach. And I don't have to judge it right now. It's just here. I'm just noticing it. No big deal. You might find your breath deepening, but there's no need to provoke that or to provoke anything. We're not trying to provoke relaxation even. We're not trying to do anything. I was reading from that great Richard Dott's book recently, Dollars Flow to Me Easily. And he's got that wonderful line in there. He says, give up any need to try to be abundant. That's kind of like what we're talking about here. When we allow ourselves to just sit or walk or be in this non-judgmental space, we can kind of just sink into it. We can give up any need to try to change anything in the present moment right now. And I think a lot of you will find that kind of rewarding and relaxing and even fulfilling in itself, just doing that. I love it. This is like, for me, this is like the vast majority of my quote unquote manifestation and even spiritual practice is just this. I just, try to do this several times a day. And I try to do it while I'm going about my day as well, but I intentionally try to carve out times to just allow myself to non-judgmentally be present. And it doesn't mean you have to do the same thing I do. Cecilia was talking about this in her latest podcast episode. It's not about doing the same thing that somebody tells you to do because it works for them. It's just figuring out what works for you. And this type of grounding works really well for me. And even if it doesn't have as profound effects for you, I do have the sense that it will probably help relax you a little bit, in the very least. And if it doesn't, that's fine too. There's so many other things you can do that might fit your personality and your sensibility better. And that's all good. That's what this is all about, is just exploring different ways and talking about different ideas to feel better and to manifest a better reality, I guess you could say. But the exploration of ideas is what's really interesting. And one reason I'm so happy to have Cecilia on. So, yeah, before we go any further, I just wanted to remind people what we've spoken about the last couple of these group sessions. Some general points that I think do help us in the same way that the grounding exercise or meditation we just did seems to help people. I find that when we put a priority on relaxing more and feeling more inwardly relaxed during the day, which doesn't mean we have to be like meditating during the day or anything physically overly relaxed or anything like that. We can be going about our normal day. But if we prioritize an inner state of feeling more relaxed and more in the flow, I think that that's a commonality that positively affects most people in terms of them manifesting better and feeling better in their daily life. And this just makes sense. It's common sense in a way. Like if you feel more fulfilled and relaxed inwardly and more in flow as you go about your daily life, chances are that life's going to treat you a little more kindly. There's plenty of people not into these manifesting concepts who would say, oh yeah, of course, that just makes sense. And then, if we're bringing manifesting ideas into this conversation, or just any type of self-improvement ideas, thinking about what it is you really want and prioritizing what you really want in your life is something that all of us are capable of doing, but I think a lot of people just don't do it. It's like people say, for instance, they want to be like in a relationship, which is great. And I totally get that. But often the underlying reasons for why they want to be in something significant or why they want a big thing, like a certain job, a certain amount of money, a certain relationship, a certain yeah, job position, whatever it may be, all these big desires people try to manifest. People don't think about why as much as they could a lot of the time. And often there's these underlying huge reasons why that if we uncover them, they help us feel better and also manifest what we want more easily in a more streamlined way. For instance, in like a relationship or for a job, the reason why might be security. You know, it might not be the person or the job that we want as much as just that feeling of security. And if we recognize that and pay attention to that, we realize, well, I can focus on that feeling of security right now, even if I don't have the job, even if I don't have the relationship. That's just an example, right? But there's all these underlying big reasons as to why we want what we want. And figuring out what we really want, because it's often not the superficial thing that we say we want that we really want. Figuring out what we really want and then gently focusing on that and becoming more inwardly relaxed in terms of feeling that and aiming for that as more of a goal in our life really helps. And then once we've done that, to bring the manifesting concepts in even more, we can think about things in the past and things now that have helped us and are helping us get what we want. We all have certain behaviors and techniques, if we want to call it that, that help us get what we want, that have worked for us in the past to, get what we desire, even if they don't seem like manifesting techniques. There's certain actions that are beneficial for you, and this is going to be dependent on who you are. It's about identifying those more and then doing them more, aligned with a state of more inner relaxation, more flow, and more of a focus on what you really want. So that's the big picture stuff that I always tend to talk to people about. And it's what we've been discussing recently a lot. So I thought I would share that here. Cecilia, any thoughts on that or on anything I just rambled on about before we open up the floor? And listen, floor, no offense, I love being the floor. No, everybody here, ask questions if you want to. Don't wait to the end, because we all know how these things go in a fine way. Like, people are quiet and then everyone's got a question at the end. So just, pretend that this is 45 minutes into it. That's a good way. Just imagine, live in the end, literally.
Yeah, exactly. Live in the end. I was going to add that actually one of the ways that I kind of look at stuff when you're talking about having the external thing to generate a feeling versus paying attention to the feeling now. So a lot of times, folks have kind of realized that and I'm going to make a very dramatic statement, it's very exaggerated. But if somebody is really unhappy with themselves and they don't really like the way maybe they physically look, and they latch on to the fact, well, if I had a relationship where somebody was really attracted to me, then I would feel better about the way that I look. And they're constantly seeking this person to give them the inner feeling of being okay with who they are, the way they physically look, the things that they're doing in life. You're constantly chasing a feeling that's never going to come, because a person's not going to actually give that to you. You're going to give it to yourself. And so when you were talking about the fact that you can have a feeling now, and I'm all about getting the stuff, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm all about getting the stuff, like my, finances improving and having the items that I want and the love life that I want. I'm all about that. But it actually does start with you. You're not going to find an external thing that creates the happiness or the joy or the freedom that you're looking for. It has to come from yourself. And even in like my own marriage, the better I am internally, the better I am with my own emotional intelligence, the regulation, the way that I'm treating myself, the better that my marriage is. Like, the relationship reflects much more calm and loving and relaxation. And it's because that's how the mirror works. And so the less that you can learn, or the more that you can learn how not to focus on an external event having to happen in order for you to feel something, the quicker you're actually able to get to obtaining whatever external event it is that you're looking for. And it's a little bit of a conundrum, because it feels at times like, well, I have to have this in order to have that feeling. And it's not actually the external event that is going to generate the feeling that you're seeking. So it's just something really important to keep in mind. I think when people are on their journey, it's a little bit of a nuanced kind of way of looking at it.
I think it's something we have to remind ourselves again and again. And that's why it's like almost as like a daily check-in. It can even be, it doesn't have to be that often, but like, why do I really want this? Like why do I want that validation? Because it always comes back to a feeling we want within,
Right.
and we think that the external has to happen to have that feeling. I think what we both believe is that it doesn't.
Right.
That
Yeah, I agree.
the feeling precedes the external, or like I would say, the feeling, when you really feel something, like it's the feeling's the fulfillment. I would go that far. And again, that's not to say don't go for your external whatever.
Right.
Go for it, absolutely. But the feeling is like, oh man.
Tim, unfortunately, and sorry, folks, I will be right back. It'll take me about 10 minutes, but my mom's doctor is calling and I've got to take this call.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I'll be right back, all.
Take your time, Cecilia, no problem. Yes, so we have a comment here from someone who should not be named because they don't want their manager to find out. Personally, I love to have the freedom to wake up at my own time and do the things I love without worrying about working a job just for food and shelter. Yes. Okay. This is a great example of that. And, we'll circle back to Cecilia, the person who wrote this in, to get her opinion on it too. So this is why this is so nuanced, because this is a great point. I love to have the freedom to wake up at my own time and do the things I love without worrying about working a job for just for food and shelter. In other words, they're just doing their, like so many people just, I can call, okay, Miriam. Okay. I can say your name. So many people, like, they feel like they're doing work, their work life, their employment, because they feel like they have to. They aren't actually doing the kind of work that they, would enjoy, generally speaking. So here, this situation, how, it sounds like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, and again, we're keeping this general anyway, because this is such a relevant question and observation, but the freedom to wake up at my own time, and probably that sense of freedom in general, that's what you want. That freedom, that sense of freedom, that feeling of freedom. I think that's the kind of thing you can clarify even more. So even though, you right now you're saying, well, that means I can't worry and be working a job just for food and shelter. Sure, that's a separate thing. What you really want, it sounds like, is the freedom to wake up and have the day to be the way you want it, right? The freedom of that. And what I think Cecilia and I are both saying is you can access sometimes, not always, but you can start accessing this sense of freedom, and you can work on ways to access the sense of freedom more and more in your normal day. Not necessarily at work or when you're worrying, but when you find those quiet moments, start playing with that. How can I access that sense of freedom, that feeling of freedom now? So I don't have to wait until I'm not working this job anymore. How can I access it now? And once you started to do that, you could even experiment with, like, well, how can I access it more often during my day, including at work? How can I work on dropping the worry and replacing it with more of a sense of ease, more of a sense of freedom, even though my 3D reality is still seemingly the same. Because if you can adapt that sense of freedom and integrate that sense of freedom more into your everyday life, chances are gradually it will start to manifest in your external world in all different ways. I don't know which ways, I don't know how it will happen or in what ways will happen. You might keep your job for gosh sakes, but just have more of a sense of freedom. Or your job might change, or any infinite possibilities, as they say. But the sense of freedom is your real why. I would guess. And this is just such a great example, because it's like, what's underlying it? And like, how can we call bullshit on the story that's not true? So the worrying and working a job just for food and shelter, that might be true. You might be worrying during the day. You might be working a job just for food and shelter, but that's got nothing to do with the freedom, really. You can still access the freedom. You see what I mean? And then when you worry, you feel like, oh, I notice I'm worrying. I'd rather not be worrying. Or like, oh, I'm noticing I'm working my job literally just for food and shelter. I'm noticing that. And you might not like that, but that doesn't have to do with your sense of freedom necessarily, if we get deep about it. I hope that makes some sense. It's nuanced. I mean, this is so nuanced and such like, a lot of this is nitty gritty work. But the benefits of doing the nitty gritty work are huge, in my opinion. So yeah, again, how can I access that freedom? Or for everybody on this call and everybody watching this on replay, how can I access what I really want, that feeling? Whether it's that feeling of like, I can tell you, like for me, like what I really want on like the deepest level is like a sense of peace in my life. And that peace doesn't have anything to do, directly with the 3D. There's plenty of things in my 3D I would prefer be a certain way as opposed to another way. Don't get me wrong. But that peace is something beyond all that, deeper than all that. How can I access that more? Right? For some people, it might be love that like is the word that would articulate it. And it's very hard to come up with a word that articulates it, but it helps just to have and for some people, what they really want might be a physical thing. Like, in this question, the person, you have the awareness to see that you really want freedom. But for some people, it might really be like, I want a job that I like and is not just about providing me food and shelter. That might be their true want, is that. So then they can focus on that, a fulfilling job that they like. Because that's a little bit different than focusing on freedom, right? Because freedom, you might still be in the same job. You might still just be doing a job for food and shelter, but the freedom's the focus. If it's a fulfilling job that you're aiming for, as opposed to one that you don't like, that's a different focus. That's not freedom you're focusing on. It's specifically a different job that's more fulfilling. Different, nuanced things. It's fascinating. Different ways of looking at desires and then working towards them. I hope that made some sense, Miriam, and to other people listening. Miriam said, and Brian, I'm going to get to your question in a second. Thank you. Sorry, I'm just scaling up here. And then Cecilia, we'll have Cecilia's painting. Miriam saying, I think I'd feel free if I had more energy. Totally. I find that working 8 hours a day makes me feel so exhausted that I feel even more trapped. Totally. Yep. Great awareness. Totally. Yep. That's part of the work. How can I feel more free in the middle of this? And I don't mean to sound flippant or uncaring. It's just a genuine question. How can I have more energy even though I'm working 8 hours a day at a job I don't like? Or, ask the question, do I have to leave this job to get that energy back, even though I don't know what I'm going to do, even though I don't know, in terms of food and shelter, exactly what's going to happen if I do that? These are the big questions. And we can circle back to that. I'm going to read this message from Brian. Just want to say thanks to the three of you, including Maggie, for taking on the recent question of how to approach manifestation while very dark events are taking place around us. I appreciated that you all offered a thoughtful disclaimer that one size doesn't necessarily fit all, as you were expressing your own particular perspectives. Maggie seemed more oriented towards I can never say that word, assuaging guilt one might come up against while pursuing wealth creation. To her credit, the reading and commentary she did with The Science of Getting Rich already erased any lingering ambiguity for me from the standpoint that stronger wealth in possession of a conscientious person, excuse me, let me read that again, from the standpoint that stronger wealth in the possession of a conscientious person is simply a means to have greater financial impact in one's life and that of others. It's going to scale down here to read the second part of what Brian said. In this corner of the manifestation realm, where we're coming together around the more down-to-earth state of relaxation and acceptance, my concern is more about retaining what I might call moral awareness regarding what's going on in the world. Even with full knowledge that the media manufacturers bait to intentionally entrap our attention, manipulate our moods, and when successful, create legions of doom scrollers or doomsayers, I believe a conscious decision to shut it all out leans towards irresponsible and a luxury we can't afford if we share the goal of living in a healthy society. Acknowledging that often as individuals, we will have little chance to impact much of the negative happenings in the world. Within the noise, there are goings on aimed at undermining our relationship to one another, and more that I believe require conscious awareness so that we can speak up and act whenever the opportunity does exist. This has gotten long-winded and is starting to sound conspiracy-based, which certainly isn't meant to be, as those who know me consider me a reasonably well-adjusted and critical thinker, unless they're just humoring me, LOL. Suffice to say, the more I endeavor to look critically through blatant imposed biases and what's going on in the world, the more I've had difficulty with the concept of tuning everything out in favor of selective ignorance. The more I've had difficulty with the concept of tuning everything out in favor of selective ignorance in favor of manifestation. I've been hoping to hear from others about validating a sort of balance between self-focus and growth in day-to-day awareness. So I appreciate all your comments, and Cecilia's in particular, which seem to express a similar choice. Miriam, meanwhile, is going to increase her coffee intake from 1 to 2 cups a day for increased energy. Jokes aside, I'll think about it. That's excellent, Miriam. Thank you. When we can go back to that, Miriam. So yeah, Brian, this was a direct message to me, but Brian raised a lot of good points here. For those of you who didn't watch the recent videos that Cecilia, Maggie, and I did, just about with the state of the world and world events, war, climate change, social inequality, things of that nature. Like, how are we supposed to apply these principles in good faith? And are we being selfish in how we apply them if we aren't aware and trying to do something about the state of the world, right? And so you can watch those videos, and I think again, obviously, everybody has to come to their own decisions and have their own moral compass, I guess you would say, about how to treat world events or large scale events that we seemingly have very little control over. Although people in the manifestation community, some people would say that they do have control over them, which I completely disagree with and I think is absurd, at least most of the time. But it's several people email me about our videos afterwards, And I really do think thinking about a lot of these concepts about, big world events, about war, for instance, about social inequality, this is a really good place to come from and to almost start our manifesting journey. Just to give you an example of stuff that we see all the time, is like there's a lot of good manifestation teachers, for instance, especially like wealth creation teachers, because there's quite a few good wealth creation teachers online today. And like, prosperity gospel teachings in general, where there's a ton of value there about creating your own wealth and how you are supply, as we often go over. But, especially these days when I see, people talking about this online, these good wealth creation coaches and teachers, it's very hard for me to look at a lot of what they're saying with like a lot, like in regards to what we just were touching upon, because it's like they're clearly just going for money and living this, you could say extravagant lifestyle without a tremendous amount of consideration of what's going on elsewhere. And that's their thing, right? They're prosperity teaching coaches or what have you, but there's, I think people should find out about global events. I mentioned Noam Chomsky and manufacturing consent in my video. I think a lot of people come into manifestation from such a desperate place that they don't want to think about it in regards to what's happening globally and how humans treat each other for good and bad. Because I think most humans treat each other actually pretty well. But to turn a blind eye to war and to social inequality and to say, oh, you manifested your own reality and this is why it's like that, is really insane. And, if we do go back to the Bible, specifically the New Testament, as so many New Thought teachers like to do, and Jesus was a badass. And he was a socialist through and through. And you can argue against that, I guess, but I don't know. You don't need an incredibly symbolic, like Neville-esque interpretation of the Bible. Like you read the Bible straight up and like you read what Jesus says, or like you read like Tolstoy, like talking about Jesus. I think like the Gospel in Brief, for instance, which Tolstoy wrote about the teachings of Jesus. Think about what Jesus is saying. And then, most of these New Thought teachers are like, oh, Jesus is, the example. And then put it in context about all this, commercialization of these LOA concepts and relate it to like what Jesus is saying. And there's some discrepancies there, to say the least. So, yeah. Miriam said, on the note about moral awareness, I remember listening to Abraham Hicks say that worrying about others doesn't help them. Even Wallace says that if you want to help others, you have to succeed for yourself. It's something I have a hard time wrapping my head around too, but if it's true that we have limited control and influence. Yeah, well, I mean, let me be blunt here. I disagree with a lot of stuff that Abraham Hicks say, a lot, including that in large part. I trust my man Jesus more than that. Of course, Abraham Hicks probably meant it in a more nuanced way, right? Like worrying and not doing anything is not going to solve anything, right? Worrying is not going to solve anything unless there's, aligned thought and action behind it to change things. But Abraham Hicks, to be blunt, I mean, yeah, I don't know. When it comes to this war stuff, and it's like, Rhonda Byrne and the Secret, and the tsunami and all that bullshit. Spiritual bypassing, in my opinion. Wallace Wattles was a socialist. I think that's an important point. I also disagree with a ton of what Waddle says in The Science of Getting Rich. I'm much more into like Goldsmith, what Goldsmith says about supply and yeah, the nature of it and like what we can do and not do. So yeah, I mean, everyone's got to find, again, other people, Maggie, for instance, like Waddles is her favorite, you know, and that resonates with her. But yeah, I mean, it's like, it is interesting to me that people just don't look at the Bible and are like, oh yeah, look what Jesus did. And don't, you know, use him, like, why not use him as a model as opposed to something that Abraham Hicks says? I mean, whatever. I you know, like, it's not like I wasn't raised in, I was not really raised in a religious household at all. I was raised in a spiritual household, one could say, but like, so I didn't come into this stuff with any, you know, deep pre-existing beliefs about the Bible or anything like that. And that probably helped me a lot. That helps me a lot when I like look at like the New Testament or what have you, because I don't have a lot of preconceived notions about what it means. So. Miriam also said, I feel like if this was the case, then why have protests work throughout history? Exactly. Exactly. Up, those people up, they were worrying, so they can't help anybody. No, they fucking worried and then they protest. They took action. Feminists fought for women's rights because they were passionate about making changes, and same with civil rights activists. Right. But those people never worried, right? Fucking Abraham Hicks. Excuse me, but Abraham Hicks pisses me off some. I've hijacked this group session. Sorry, Cecilia. Spiritual bypassing. Spiritual bypassing. I'm amped now. Yeah. The Gospel in Brief by Tolstoy. He just, the story of Jesus, he took out all the miracles, you know? Noam Chomsky, manufacturing consent. That's stuff to check out as opposed to most of these law of attraction teachers. That, you check that stuff out and are into LOA teachings, it gets interesting. Or we can stay high in the sky and ignore it. I don't know. Valentina says, in my opinion, it may just be a paradigm. The fact that it's worked in the past doesn't mean we still need to act from that place. I'm not sure exactly what that means in context of this, Valentina. I don't know if that's related to Brian's point or not. Brian said, thanks for struggling through that text and certain topics. Brevity isn't doable for me. Valentina says, can you act from care without dwelling on worry? Right. That's the state or the outlook, right? Most of us are going to worry, some folks, especially if you're thinking about these world events and you want to affect world events in a positive way. So the worry's there, but can you act from care and take action even with the worry being there, or the fear being there, or the stress being here, right? Because unlike a lot of these pie in the sky LOA teachings, you read successful people who make history, right? Like, you know, like the feminist movement, the civil rights movement. These people took massive action. And they worried and they struggled and there was fear and they took action through it. And they created change through action and aligned judgment, through caring, loving. Can you act from care without dwelling on worry? It's wonderful. India asks, what does Goldsmith say? Joel Goldsmith. Yeah, we've, if you look on my channel, I've got a lot of Joel Goldsmith videos, commentary on there. Goldsmith just is a really good Christian mystic in the truest sense of like, we are of ourselves, we can do very little or nothing. And the way to access spiritual supply is to cast our bread upon the water and have it return to us naturally. And that's a very like humble, turn the other cheek type of position or outlook. And it's can be very difficult to embody. But for Goldsmith and a lot of these, older LOA teachers, deeply steeped in Christian values teachers, that was kind of the approach. Yeah, sorry about that, Miriam. Your messages keep disappearing before I send it. So I don't know. Yeah, the Zoom chats, you never know in terms of that. Question, thoughts on manifesting through difficult emotions, such as doubt, external circumstances, and negative imagination. For example, manifesting financial freedom, but not knowing how it will possibly happen. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the main things that we look at. I would start, Zoom user is the name here. I would start Zoom user with a playlist I did that's actually called Manifesting Through Difficult Emotions. You might have already seen that, already watched that, but that's the work is, for instance, manifesting financial freedom when you have no idea, or it's like, you want freedom, but you've got this job that you see holding you back from getting that freedom. How can we make it so we have the purity of our intention or our desire, and we don't let the external reality, the 3D, overwhelm us or make it so we're just worrying without taking action? How can we feel more of a sense of okayness, not necessarily even like fulfillment, but just like I'm okay in the middle of all this shit? Hi, Cecilia.
I have my deepest apologies, but I'm back.
No, I went way off the rails in a good way.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we were talking about war.
It is, but all right.
The people were wondering though, like if you have a lot of people liked our Maggie, your and my, talking about global events videos.
Oh yeah.
And I went on like a really high horse tangent, just saying how I blasted Abraham Hicks in the process, like of just like how so much of this manifesting stuff, talks a big game, but then I don't know, you just see a lot of influencers and wealth coaches that their focus is on manifesting a lot of money, and that's great. I don't have a problem, just doing that's okay. But you wonder about the moral compass and where people are coming from and what they're teaching. And you compare it with the life, the supposed life of Jesus, the stories we hear of Jesus, and he was such a socialist, and it's such a difficult teaching, and turning the other cheek is not an easy way to face the world. But there seems to be some discrepancies there. Anyway, people, if you want to spend a couple of minutes or not, just talking about any follow-up feelings you have about this, how to integrate the manifesting stuff in the middle of this world that we live in that seemingly is chaotic and crazy and all of that.
I think for me, and I talked about this in my video, I don't know if folks here saw it, but for me, I had to come to terms with the fact that there's a lot of things I'm never going to understand. And there's a lot of beliefs that I have that I'm likely never going to be able to shake and to change. And one of those beliefs for me is that some people do really horrific things. But I also believe that when you're doing something horrific to another human, it shows your disconnect from God. So the further away from God that I am, the further away from my own connection, whether you want to call it the universe or life source or, God, whichever word you want to use, this unconditional love that I truly believe that we all come from. And I don't know why, but the further you get away from that, the less that you remember your connection to that, the more likely you are to hurt somebody else, and usually with some sort of justification. Most people who do something have some sort of justification in their own mind. Their perception is allowing them to justify even if they're struggling with the fact that they continue to do it, they're maybe justifying the fact, well, I still have an urge that I can't control. I still have a desire that I can't stop, like this kind of thing. But it really just comes from this disconnect, because the more connected you are to God and this life source, the less that you want to hurt anybody or anything. And I think a lot of times what happens with in the manifestation community, at least the parts that I've seen, is that people have an issue with saying, I don't know. And I don't know why. Like they want to have like the only answer and the perfect answer that you have to do. And like, no, you don't know. Like, I'm sorry, but I don't believe that actually anybody here knows for sure all of it and why it works the way it does and how the connections are and etc. And for some reason, there's just this like egotistical desire to never admit, like, I don't know why that exists here. I don't know why we can't live in just like euphoria. I don't know why what we're here to learn. But I do firmly believe, my own belief is that the more connected you are with God, the more you find inner peace and enjoyment in life and seeing these like beautiful things. And even people who like really frustrate me, I'm not mad at them. I don't want, like, I can get mad at somebody in traffic, right? I can get mad at somebody who I feel like has wronged me. It's not that I'm never angry at somebody, but I would never wish them harm. I would never wish somebody to get ill or to lose a loved one or to have any desire to take their life or their livelihood or anything away from them. But I think that's because I'm more connected to like who I truly am and where I truly come from. And this like as close to unconditional love as I can get for the people that are around me. And so the folks who get further away from that, I think those are the ones that end up hurting others. That's my very long 2 cents.
Great 2 cents. Great 2 cents. Really wonderful points. And you touched upon those in your video as well. Maybe I'll link below to our 3 war videos.
Yeah, and I wanted to because I see the comment. I hope I'm not pronouncing your name wrong, but Miriam, that even people who frustrate me, I'm not mad at them. I'd love to have that mentality as someone who works in customer care. For me, oh, and gosh, I don't think I'm supposed to call somebody's name.
No, it's okay.
Sorry about that. I'm
it's
not
okay.
tattling. Okay. So when we have like when in customer care, I realized that frustration. Okay. All right. Perfect. Thank you. So I was like, oh no, I did it already. But so I actually used to work in escalations. So I was part of a call center. This is many years ago. And I was part of a call center. And in that call center, if people got frustrated and they wanted to speak to a manager, I was part of the group that got escalated to. And we had some of the most horrific people. I mean, just people who were not very nice. Who say they would hope that I would die as I was like driving home at night from, from work and etc. And I remember even then being like frustrated with people, but I just would realize that they are in a position that clearly they think this is okay. And to be honest, I would answer people back of like, I'm listening to you, but directly attacking me is not going to get either of us anywhere. And sometimes petty comments like that person who made the comment about, like, I hope you die on your way home from work. I said, oh man, I'll have to make sure that my 6-year-old daughter knows that because I'm sure she'd be really, really sad about that. And they quickly apologized, like, holy cow, I cannot believe I said that over a phone bill. So for me, it was always keeping things in perspective. That if I can focus on myself, then being mad at me doesn't really matter. And I don't know if you're in a position in escalations that you can say you're going to end the call. That was something that I was able to do. But the more that I focus on my own inner peace and the more relaxed that I get into it, the less this stuff bothers me. When stuff comes at work, if like people are angry, if they don't like something that I did, I've designed tools to calm myself down. And the more that I practice them, the more that I can do it like really, really quick. So like breathing exercises, physically moving myself, even if I'm on the phone, getting up and like physically moving, trying to find some sort of silver lining, even if that silver lining is, man, I'm really thankful that's not my life. So some sort of silver lining has really helped. And those can be difficult, but the more that you approach those and go back to them, the more that you're learning how to regulate your own emotions and the more that you learn how to become indifferent to what these external factors are. So you can accept that they're happening, but still be indifferent to the fact that they are and not give them your like focus and attention and increased attention so that they continue to build, because everything in your life is going to build. It's like firing or fanning a flame when you're giving it attention. So I really recommend that if you're in a position like that, that you start to learn some emotional regulation tools that help you, so that you can try to ground and calm yourself in the moment. And at first, it'll be difficult if you're anything like me, where I was like, oh man, I'm getting really worked up. And so I would have to stop myself like 10 minutes after it happened and calm myself. And then it would become 5 minutes after it happened, I could calm myself. And then it was 3 minutes into it happening. And now I can do it most of the time pretty immediately. Sometimes not. I'm a mother. If I feel like somebody's attacking my kids, is, off the rails. But the more that I returned to that, the easier it got. And the easier it gets, the easier like life is becoming. It's an interesting cycle to watch.
Yeah. Great points. Great points. Yeah, and it definitely does seem something I think we all touched upon in that video, in those videos about global events, and like obviously more on like a micro level on our day-to-day level getting triggered, is like the more you're able to access, as you said, that inner relaxation, the better you're able to behave towards others, you know what I mean? And your reactivity becomes less, and you're just able to behave more sanely. And as you mentioned, on like a global scene, it's a lot of people, it's the collective not doing that, or a large percentage of the population not doing that seems to trigger often catastrophe and things like that. And you could also argue too, I mean, we've talked enough about this, but like, there is definitely that media angle too of like, you hear so much about war and suffering, but the reality is like the vast majority of people are not in that kind of situation, and like, but the news focuses on it. I'm not trying to make like a political statement by saying that or anything like that. It's just like, that is true, generally speaking, is the media focuses on misfortune more than fortune, and like all the wonderful things that are happening every day, but you're going to hear about the global catastrophes, much, much, much more than the wonder that is everywhere if you look for it. So there's, again, it's all a balancing act, and, using your wonderful common sense. And I think both of us are, Cecilia and myself, are constantly baffled, like Cecilia said, why in the manifesting community people are so set on being right and saying like, oh, I know how it is. It just is so crazy. Like, oh, I don't know. Like I grew up with like all these great Buddhist teachers, and like one of the biggest things was like, oh, I don't know. It's like, these are like the Zen masters and stuff. And they're like, I don't know, just become not knowing. Like, that's okay. I love that. That's just nice. I don't know. I relate to that more. So.
Yeah, me too. Definitely. I think there's some beauty in accepting that you don't know, and being honest about the fact that you don't know.
Right. No shame in that.
Oh, that's an interesting comment, that you're nervous that if you have positive feelings about your job, I'll stay stuck in it. That's actually a really good comment. So I actually think that the more that you generate, like being able to, like, you can accept something and not be like, oh yeah, I really want to stay here, and be grateful for it, and be grateful for the parts like the paycheck or what it supplies you, and etc. And the more that you're grateful, like the more additional stuff comes in. That's why a lot of times with folks, I also say, don't focus on what you don't have, focus on what you do have, because the more that you focus on what you do have, and the more that you learn how to enjoy your time and enjoy your day, and, really just kind of build natural gratitude, not force it, the more that it just increases for you. And so you can be, in my opinion, thankful for the job that you have, and the paycheck that you have, and the things that you're doing, even if you're frustrated with them, and actually build from that, versus that making you stay stuck. Like, to me, the more that you are grateful for something, just the better stuff keeps getting, and it just rolls in. And I remind folks too that, my understanding, my beliefs, what I have seen work, you're talking to your own subconscious. you're not trying to convince something outside of you that you want something better. You're just trying to make sure that you're not convincing yourself that you, with your attention, that you want to stay where you are. Um, so when you're talking to your own subconscious, like you're actually talking to you, just a quiet part that, is sitting back, kind of filtering and grabbing everything that you're thinking and believing and giving attention to. So you don't have to convince it that you want a new job. You already actually know that. But the more that you focus on your gratitude and things that are going well, and, even having techniques to help you get into that state of having something new, the more that comes into your life. But you're not like trying to convince Tim that you want this so you can have it. But that's not the point. You're doing it internally for you. So you don't have to be too worried about like, how will I know that I'm doing it right? Or how can I make sure that I ask like so specifically clear so I don't get the wrong thing? Because it's still yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I just would like to piggyback on that really quickly too. We've been, again, dollars flow to me that Richard Dott's book explains this really well, but like he's got this great excerpt or section in it where he talks about intentions. And he's basically like, the universe knows what you want. Like you don't have, like, you've already told it. Like if you, it's like you've set the intention in motion. And like, why I was talking earlier about like your why is the why keeps you focused on what you want to really feel, like what the deepest part of you. But the actual thing you want, like the better job, the new job, the more freedom, the universe, God knows that already. You don't have to keep on affirming, right? You can keep on affirming if it helps you stay, in line more, if that works for you, that technique. But actually like having to ask, like being afraid that like if you don't ask enough for what you want, you're not going to get it is lack. I mean, that's a lackful mindset ultimately. Like the whole idea is like you already have it in the 4D, right? It's already there, right? So don't worry that like you have to state your intention over and over again, unless you want to, because it can be beneficial and it can keep you more on track. Something like robotic affirmations, when you say something over and over and over and over and over again. But God's not going to forget. If you really want something, the universe, energy, source, whatever knows. You don't have to worry. You don't have to keep on asking because you're scared that source is going to forget. Source is not going to forget. Miriam says, you're right, Tim. Maybe I misunderstood the common advice to be crystal clear on what you want in order not to get muddy results. It's Miriam, you haven't been taking over the conversation. This has been great. Yeah, exactly. If you're crystal clear, and this is again the why thing, like why makes you crystal clear. But once you have that clarity, that's the clarity is what's important, not like asking over and over again. You don't have to ask,
And I think I probably missed part of that conversation when I had to jump for a little bit. But I think for me, I always recommend like the first thing that you need to know is what outcome you're looking for. And that outcome is whatever aspiration it is that you're looking for. So maybe instead, and something that I have started working on personally that has been really helpful to me, is that instead of looking at something as like a specific kind of thing, I look for the aspiration that's in it. So if you had the job that you wanted to have, or you were making money in the way that you want to, or you just got buttloads of money, right? Whatever thing it is for you. When you look, what is the aspiration of that? That you have the freedom to have the life that you want, that you have the freedom in your own calendar, that you have financial freedom, whatever it is. And so when you break down, instead of looking at like a very habit driven, routine driven goal, and instead you just look, okay, what's the aspiration that I have here? Do I want to be my healthiest self? Do I want to hike the top of a mountain? Like what's the aspiration that I'm looking for? And then you can take a look at, okay, like what's the feeling of that? Because most aspirations are tied to a feeling. I want to feel good when I, am wearing my clothing. I want to feel like I'm loved when I go to bed at night. I want to feel like I have financial security so I can do the things that I want to do or see the world the way that I want to see it. And so when you are becoming crystal clear, you're understanding what that feeling is that you're seeking instead of the, well, I think maybe I want a job as a pilot, but I don't know, I might also want one as a UPS driver. Like, then you're looking too much like and it's not to say you can't have this specific thing, but just broaden it to like the aspiration. What's the end aspiration that I want? What is the thing that I want out of this job? How do I want to feel when I go to bed at night? How do I want to feel when I'm spending my day? And that helps you really gather some clarity in what it is that you're actually seeking and what like your desired outcome or wish fulfilled is.
Yeah. This is a good nuanced follow-up. Anthony asks, when you say don't keep asking the universe, is affirming what you want, such as I am gaining, once enough, or should you affirm every day throughout those days to make yourself believe it? That's the whole thing. I mean, like, if saying I am gaining, or, a popular affirmation similar to that, like, every day in every way I'm getting better and better, if that keeps you clear, like, that's a clear affirmation. I am gaining. So if saying it over and over keeps you on point and keeps you aware of your deep why, it can be worth saying. And I've done a lot of videos about robotic affirmations. I think it's a great technique for a lot of people. You can robotically affirm as much as you want, but really what you're trying to do is get to that point of clarity and belief. And if you have that clarity and belief, you don't need to robotically affirm. You can, but it's just a tool. Affirmations are a tool. They're not the end all be all. These are all tools to get us to have clarity, belief, and feeling of what we want, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so I still do affirmations every day, but I don't know that they're like for a specific thing. Yeah, so I do more of just like things about myself that I appreciate and that I like. I like to do a thing each night where I spend some time just writing out like stuff that I appreciated about myself from that day, things that I liked that I did or that happened to me, or things that went really well. And I like to do that. And to me, that's still, it's still affirming, just maybe in a little bit of a different way.
Yeah, I mean, I was robotically affirming all this week, like not throughout the day. It's too lazy to do that, but I was robotically affirming in the morning when I was walking my daughter for at least 10, probably on average, probably about 20 minutes a day, and then affirming throughout the day. Like, I do really general affirmations usually, like things like peace, right, or like my consciousness is supply, just stuff like that resonates with me. But David asks, like, that kind of answers your question a little bit, David. Like, without needing to share specifics, do either of you have present aspirations that you feel that stuck on, that you feel stuck on, and you needing new techniques to assist with? What I do, like when I feel some blockage or some fear or some stress that I'm not able to clear out quickly, or that I'm trying to process, I'll often utilize a tech like something like robotic affirmations, because it helps me get clear and pointed, but I'm still relying on my main techniques, which are not robotic affirmations in my case. Like for me, I more meditative, as a lot of my recent videos have been talking about. But yeah, I mean, I'll try anything if I think it's going to help. But I usually find for most people that there's a few things that really help, and everything else is just like, well, I'm going to change it up some now to shake things up. Curious about your feelings about that, Cecilia.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. It's a big one, and I'll give details about it, like totally transparent, so everybody knows. Like, all of us have our hangups, and I actually bring up Oprah a lot because, like, Oprah clearly, and back in the day, luckily, this is not as seen much in the media anymore. Thank goodness, because there's been some changes to the way that the media talks about women's bodies. But, for a really long time, Oprah, even though she was on top of the world and has always very openly spoken about manifestation and using her mind and etc., she struggled with her weight. So I think everybody always has kind of their thing that is really easier for them, and then some that like have a little bit of kind of more of a hold on them. And mine, and I've talked to Tim about this quite a bit, um, mine is this fear of being seen. So my life is a digital marketer. I manage a brand for a large company on social media. I know every way to work in SEO. I know every way to get your videos seen. I know all of these things, but I have this fear that holds me back because I have this like fear of being seen and fear of being judged. And I've talked about this quite a bit. And while I don't really seek like different techniques because I'm aware of it. I'm pretty self-aware, I think, as a human. And so I'm aware of it and I know the things that I can do to kind of overcome it. And I am slowly overcoming it and slowly working towards it. But I mean, there is definitely, that fear of being seen and that fear of, not, I don't know, of like being judged or especially, I've had comments in my corporate workplace made, to me about what I'm doing. And that kind of then adds that fear. And of course, it's reflecting back to me. So of course I'm getting the commentary, but I would say, yeah, that's the one that I definitely still work on. And I think that it's good to be honest and to be like, I don't want to go out there and tell everybody my life is like perfect and I have nothing wrong and nothing to work on. Like this to me goes back to the same thing that you see a lot in this community where people want to act like they've got the answers to everything. And I can tell you what I'm doing wrong. I can tell you where my wrong. I can tell you where my focus is. I can tell you where my attention is and what my fear and my block or limiting belief or whatever it is. I can tell you what those things are, but I still have to overcome them with my own self emotionally to like let that go. And I'm slowly working on that. But yeah, it kind of goes back to the same thing of me just being like, I don't understand this desire to act like you have nothing wrong or nothing that you still have to work on. Like, I think the transparency makes you more authentic and human. That of course I have stuff to work on. Of course I have stuff that's holding me up and blocking me and scares me. And of course I sometimes often retreat back to comfort instead of pushing forward.
Comfort can be good.
Heck yes.
That's yeah. I mean, it's such great points, and I mean that's again, it's such a wacky community. Yeah, where these like the presentation, I don't know, is it just marketing or are these people just crazy? I like that like know everything and my life is perfect. And like, I mean, you've talked to some of these people on Reddit, for instance, Cecilia, they have this facade. And then if you actually met the person, you'd be like, what the fuck? But it's like everybody like, I don't know. Yeah, it is weird how people try to present themselves perfectly. I mean, the flaws are what's interesting, it's all cool. Like, that's how we learn. That's the process. And like getting through stuff that seems difficult, blocks and all this stuff. I go through it all the time. Like that's the work. That's why I'm into this stuff, is to move through it and learn about
continuous
myself.
self-improvement.
Right. I mean, that's where it's at. I just wanted to, Kate had a comment I just wanted to read. I feel once I have the idea of what I want and have made it clear through whichever method my subconscious is pointed in the right direction, then I stop the self-doubt from keeping me stuck by beginning to do things that make sense for the desired outcome. I assume that I will know what I need to do. If some things I start doing aren't seeming to help, I assume it is still learning and a benefit and try something else. Yeah. Great observation. Great observation.
Did you also see the comment about hating affirmation?
No. Could you read it or do you see it?
Yeah, oh yeah, I can get to it.
And I know you have to go soon.
Yeah, no worries. Let's see here. Oh, okay. It says, did you guys ever hate affirmations at any point? I have a hard time with them. So I was going to say on that point, if you don't mind, Tim, is that I'm not, so when I say that I say affirmations in the morning, if it's something that I hate, I'm not going to continue to do it. I'm not forcing myself to do that because then like the affirmation, whatever you're spitting out doesn't matter. It's the intention behind it that matters. And as a matter of fact, I think when I say that I'm quoting Tim, but it's your intention that matters, is that you have to have the intention behind it. I can make myself believe that if I stand on only my left foot in the morning and raise my right foot up in front of me and jump 3 times and then say my affirmation, that's the only way it'll work, because my intention behind it is what matters. And instead, essentially for me, like I don't do robotic affirmations. It's just not for me. It's not something that I like. I hate it and I don't want to do it. So I don't do it.
Right.
And I'm not saying it can't work for other people, because I have seen plenty of people that it works phenomenally for. My mind is like, no, we have to stop. And I also struggle personally, and I've struggled in the past personally, I can become thought obsessive. So if I do robotic affirmations, I then become thought obsessive, and it makes it difficult for me to focus on other things in my life. And it makes it difficult for me to continue to put my attention like into work or my children or things that I'm doing, reading a book, whatever it is. And so I have to recognize that about myself. And I think that's part of this, is knowing what can you recognize about yourself and make sure that you are doing what makes sense for you and that makes you feel good and makes you feel connected to the intention that you're trying to do. My affirmations in the morning are just like saying nice things about myself. I'm strong, I'm creative, I'm good at the things that I do. It's kind of funny. We were talking about this earlier in the chat. I'm a good communicator. I'm able to do this. I'm able to do that. Like, I like to have that kind of stuff when my coffee brews, just as like a pick me up in the morning because it feels good. So those are the affirmations that I use.
Yeah. Again, it's like, we've talked about this a lot. If you look on my channel, there's so many videos about this. Like, affirmations, just do what works for you, or don't use them at all. If they don't, like, really, it's like Miriam made a good comment. So I guess they take business principles very seriously, making money by presenting a solution to a problem. And oftentimes the problems are manufactured. You're not affirming enough, but buy my course for $100 and I'll give you all my affirmations and routines that will guarantee your manifestation. I mean, it's like that kind of ridiculousness. And it's like, again, just affirmations are just a tool. Just use them if you want. There's a lot of different kinds. That's why I talk about them so much. But I mean, ironically, like, I'm not a huge affirmer either. I like robotic affirmations sometimes, but like, generally speaking, like, there's so many other approaches and techniques that I find more, not so many, because there's not that many, but like, there's things that I do every day and love doing. And affirmations are not one of them. You got to figure out what you love doing in regards to applying some of these techniques. I think that's going to help you way more than like manifesting than affirming for a certain amount of times, or saying a certain thing. Yeah. So yeah, we're wrapping up here. I'm just looking to see any final comments here.
We were talking about, sorry, I'm on my phone, so sometimes like writing back in the chat, then it like blocks my phone screen. But
No
we were
problem.
just talking in the chat about Neville's lecture, where Neville talks about how he's like, I've been teaching this for 30 years and I still have to arrest my thoughts daily. And to me, I adore Neville Goddard. I think he's like the teacher that I resonate the most with. And to me, it was like, I appreciated his honesty in that. Of like, I still have to watch my thoughts. Of course, I still get frustrated and get caught up in things. Like, I don't think the key, Tim mentioned self-improvement. I don't think the end like key thing here is to never feel anything. Like, it's just to learn how to better control your thoughts towards the things that you want, so you can live a life that you really enjoy and that you can feel good. But there's still going to be times where you're frustrated, and there's still going to be times that you're banging your head against the wall, and that you have to catch yourself, where you're like, well, wait a minute, where am I actually placing my attention? What am I truly paying attention to right now? And that's just, I think, one of the keys in here, because once you do that and you're like letting go of this, it's so reassuring and calming, because it becomes self-forgiveness, where it's like, I'm not mad at myself for doing it. I'm not mad at myself for putting my intention somewhere else. I'm not mad at myself for having a fear of being seen and possibly holding my own self back. It just is what it is. And now I can focus on it and change it and grow from it, instead of being mad at myself or upset with myself for the things that I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Maggie always talks about that really short essay Neville has, Fundamentals. It's from like the early 50s. and it really isn't I can see why she likes it so much, because it's such like a straightforward fundamentals of like doing this, like the way he talks about like just observing yourself without judgment in that short bulletin is really, it's empowering for the reason you just said. It's
Yeah.
like you learn to forgive yourself, and then by forgiving yourself you grow. And I always like to quote or paraphrase that Carl Rogers quote, like it was it's only when I accept myself fully as I am that I'm able to change. It's kind of like that. I always think of that. Yeah. So thank you all for joining. Thank you, Cecilia, for this great guest chat. We'll
Thank you.
have you on again soon and go deep into the woods with some bizarre Neville quotes or something. Is there anything? Cecilia can be reached at her website, ceciliahendrix.com, and on YouTube it's Unleashing Happiness. You'll find her channel. We're going to link to your channel and link to our war videos. And I've seen a lot of comments about the Jesus socialist comment. You don't have to agree with me with the Jesus socialist comment, and I mean that broadly, by the way. Like, I don't have any like firm conviction about that. I just think it's interesting how people talk about the J man and then are, talking about the J man in relation to all these seemingly things that he probably would not be that into. We really shouldn't go there too much, though. I don't think in the remaining 2 minutes of this. Any other videos or things we should link to for this, Cecilia? Or any final thoughts?
No, I don't think so. Oh, I was going to let everybody know, and I'm posting some more and kind of updating some of them. But I'm going to use this as like a plug that I have a free masterclass series on my YouTube. So if you find it, Unleashing Happiness, and I'm pretty sure you can also find it by searching Cecilia Hendrix. But if you go to that, I've got a free masterclass series. There's a workbook that you can download, but you definitely don't have to have that if you don't want to. There's currently 4 videos. One of them is getting pulled down and updated, but there's some good stuff in there, especially the first one on identifying like what it is that you want. So it's a bit more direct in like what I have found is what other people are putting in courses, but I feel like to just be kind of available to folks, especially figure out what it is that you want. So yeah,
Great.
if you have any interest, it is on my YouTube.
Yeah, definitely check that out. We'll put a link to that as well. And I guess I'm wrapping it up. This is like,
Cool.
I love kind of this. It's like the trip just kind of trickles to an end,
Right.
But yeah, we'll be back soon for another group conversation. And if you have questions, you know where to reach us. Until next time.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, everybody, for coming on. Thank you, Cecilia.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now.